What was the Great Depression? We hear the term all the time, a shorthand for economic disaster. But what did it actually feel like to live through it? It was more than just a line on a graph pointing down. It was a decade of hardship, poverty, and uncertainty that reshaped the world. So today we're going to unravel the story of how a booming economy went into a catastrophic freefall and ask the crucial question, could it happen again? Our story begins in the Roaring '20s. It was an era of unprecedented prosperity in America. Jazz music filled the airwaves, new technologies like cars and radios were changing daily life, and the stock market seemed like a one-way ticket to riches. People were borrowing money like never before to buy stocks, a practice known as buying on margin. It felt like the party would never end. But on October 24, 1929, the music stopped. That day, known as Black Thursday, the market started to tremble. Panic set in. 5 days later, on Black Tuesday, the floor completely fell out. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted, and in a single day, billions of dollars of wealth vanished into thin air. Imagine your life savings, your entire future, gone in the blink of an eye. That was the reality for millions. The Wall Street crash was the spark, but the banking system was the tinderbox. In the 1920s, banks were not as regulated as they are today. Many had invested their customers' savings directly into the stock market. When the market crashed, so did they. People, terrified of losing their money, rushed to withdraw their cash all at once. This is called a bank run. The problem is, banks don't keep all their deposits on hand. They lend most of it out. When everyone demanded their money back simultaneously, the banks couldn't pay. They collapsed. By 1933, nearly half of all banks in the United States had failed, taking the savings of millions of ordinary families with them. There was no federal deposit insurance back then. If your bank went under, your money was just gone. With savings wiped out and credit frozen, the economy ground to a halt. Businesses couldn't get loans to operate, and consumers had no money to spend. The result was a vicious cycle. Companies laid off workers to cut costs, which meant even fewer people had money to buy goods, which led to more layoffs. By 1933, the unemployment rate had skyrocketed to a staggering 25%. 1 in every 4 working Americans was jobless. In industrial cities, the situation was even worse. People lost their homes and were forced into makeshift shanty towns, derisively named Hoovervilles, after the president, Herbert Hoover. Bread lines and soup kitchens became a common sight, a symbol of the nation's despair. The crisis wasn't confined to America's borders. The US was the world's economic engine, and when it sputtered, the whole world stalled. American banks recalled their loans from European countries, particularly Germany, which was still recovering from World War I. This triggered a chain reaction of financial crises across the globe. To make matters worse, governments turned inward. In 1930, the US passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which raised taxes on imported goods to record levels. The idea was to protect American industries, but the effect was catastrophic. Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs, and global trade collapsed by over 60%. Instead of protecting jobs, this trade war only deepened the depression for everyone. As if the economic devastation wasn't enough, nature delivered its own brutal blow. A severe and prolonged drought hit the Great Plains in the 1930s. For years, farmers had been plowing up the native grasses to plant wheat, unaware that they were destroying the very root systems that held the soil in place. When the rain stopped and the winds picked up, the topsoil turned to dust and blew away in massive, suffocating black blizzards. This ecological disaster became known as the Dust Bowl. It buried farms, homes, and machinery and made the land uninhabitable. Hundreds of thousands of families, nicknamed Okies, were forced to abandon their farms and migrate west, mostly to California, in a desperate search for work, only to find more hardship. So, what was the government doing while all this was happening? Initially, the response from President Herbert Hoover's administration made things worse. Hoover was a believer in rugged individualism and feared that direct government aid would make people dependent and weaken the national character. He urged businesses to voluntarily maintain wages and employment, but in the face of economic collapse, that was impossible. He did approve some public works projects like the Hoover Dam, but it was too little, too late. His reluctance to provide large-scale, direct relief to the unemployed and the failing banks meant the economy continued its downward spiral, and public frustration grew into anger. The turning point came in 1932 with the election of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR promised the American people a New Deal. He brought a new philosophy to the White House, that it was the government's responsibility to intervene and help its citizens in a time of crisis. In his first 100 days, he launched a whirlwind of programs. He declared a nationwide bank holiday, closing all banks to stop the runs, and then passed legislation to stabilize them and create the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, which still insures our bank deposits today. This single act did more to restore public confidence than anything else. He then rolled out a series of programs known as the Alphabet Soup, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, which put young men to work on conservation projects, the Public Works Administration, the PWA, which built schools, bridges, and dams, and the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA, which brought electricity to the rural South. The New Deal didn't end the Depression overnight, but it did stop the freefall. It provided jobs, relief, and most importantly, a sense of hope that the government was on their side. The Great Depression left deep, lasting scars on the world. Economically, it led to a fundamental shift in the role of government. The idea of laissez-faire, that government should stay out of the economy, was largely abandoned. The New Deal created a social safety net with programs like Social Security, which provides pensions for the elderly and unemployment insurance. These reforms permanently expanded the federal government's role in the economy and in the lives of citizens. Globally, the economic instability of the 1930s helped fuel the rise of extremist political movements in Europe and Asia, contributing to the outbreak of World War II. It was ultimately the massive industrial production for the war that finally pulled the United States and the world out of the Great Depression. This brings us to the final, critical question. Could a catastrophe of this magnitude happen again? It's a complex question. In many ways, we are much better prepared today. We have safeguards that didn't exist in 1929, like the FDIC, unemployment insurance, and a more active Federal Reserve that can inject money into the financial system during a crisis. We saw these tools used during the 2008 financial crisis, which, while severe, was prevented from spiraling into a full-blown depression. However, the world economy is more interconnected than ever before. A crisis in one major economy can spread globally in an instant. New challenges like cyber attacks on financial systems or global events like a pandemic present risks that the architects of the New Deal could never have imagined. So, while a repeat of the 1930s is unlikely, the lesson of the Great Depression is that we must remain vigilant. It teaches us about the fragility of prosperity, the dangers of unchecked speculation, and the critical importance of a coordinated, compassionate response in times of crisis. The story of the Great Depression isn't just history. It's a powerful reminder of what's at stake. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. See you next time.